Hi everyone, it's Joe here from Lawn Solutions Australia, and welcome to this episode of Turf Talk, where again I'm joined by my colleague Nathan. Nathan, how you going?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
So it's the first day of spring, an exciting time for lawn fanatics and lawn users everywhere. So I'm guessing we're going to get into some spring lawn care prep type stuff today.
Spring lawn care. Spring has sprung. It's our favourite time of year, I guess, working in the lawn industry. In some areas, your lawn's probably started to wake up, hopefully. If not, it will be very soon. So we'll be looking at things you need to do throughout the spring period to get your lawn humming again, I guess, coming out of that winter dormancy and transitioning it through into the warmer months as best you can. So, Joe, where should we start?
So the place we're going to start today isn't actually on your lawn itself. It's getting the equipment that you use on your lawn in order for a busy season. So depending where you are over the country, over the last few months, you probably haven't opened the shed or the garage and got much of your lawn equipment out because it hasn't been necessary. So chances are it's going to need a little tidy up in order to get it ready for a busy season ahead. And all the forecasts suggest we're going to have a pretty dry, pretty hot spring and summer. So with all the moisture that's in the ground, I know on the east coast of Australia, we've just got a bit of rain the last few days. If we get some more of that over the next few weeks, your lawn really is going to grow and grow a lot. But it's not just your lawn. If you don't get the right practices in place, your weeds are going to be growing as well. So it's pretty important to make sure your equipment's in good order. So the first one I guess we're going to start with is a lawnmower. Now, I'm the first to confess I'm not the most mechanically minded person here, so I'm not going to tell you how to fix your actual mower, but it's just important that it's time to bring it out and really have a good look at it. Check your oil, check your filters, but most of all, check your mower blades. I think that's super, super important. Too often, whether it's rotary or cylinder, people are not checking their mower blades regularly enough. And you may notice when you do your first cut that the top of your grass blade, and it's particularly noticeable on buffalo turf, is jaded or ripped or torn and not a clean cut. You can tell it by its what's the word? Serrated, I guess.
Serrated edge, yeah.
Yeah, serrated edge on your grass blade. If you see that, it looks quite discoloured after you mow. It generally means you've got blunt mower blades. So it's something to look at. You can either sharpen, or if you've got a normal rotary mower, you can buy mower blades pretty cheap from your local hardware
And if
store.
your mower just went into the shed at the end of last growing season, it's quite possible that you haven't addressed it and you're going to be bringing that back out again soon, and it's just gonna make a bit of a mess of it. And your lawn's probably already not looking at its best. If you've got a warm season variety, it's quite possible that it's lost a bit of colour, lost a bit of health condition over the winter period. If you're quite cold, it might have had some frost damage, that sort of thing. So chucking a mower on it with blunt blades is only going to make it look worse and set you another step back before you start moving forwards.
And whilst I confess, again, I know absolutely nothing about the mechanics of an actual lawnmower, I do know one thing, and that is if you are changing your blades and you've got a normal mower, tip it backwards. Don't tip it on the side because I know something bad happens.
Good simple tip.
Mick, our producer, is very mechanically minded, and he just gave me a little nod then. So tip your mower backwards and not sideways or up on its side. If you can, get it up on a hoist somewhere and get right underneath it. But if you're just on the ground, you can tip it backwards, tie the handle down, and you can work on most of your mower pretty easily.
And if you're not sure, book it into your local mower shop and address those common things. They'll replace the spark plug. They might tip out old stale fuel and put some fresh fuel in it. Do the blades, replacing them with new blades is always best, particularly with rotary mowers, rather than trying to sharpen cheap blades as they are. Get it in the best condition you can so that you're cutting that grass as cleanly as you possibly can.
Straight from my book, take it to the mechanic. Don't even bother. But it's not just petrol gear. It's if you have battery gear as well. I know I myself have a battery whippersnipper, which I love, and a battery blower. It's really important. I ran into this problem last year. If you haven't used it in a while, check your chargers and check your batteries because things can go wrong, and the last thing you want to do is be all excited to use your battery equipment and your charger doesn't work and your battery can't charge. So as from experience, please make sure you check that too. And whippersnipper cord, make sure you got some. Same problem happened to me the other weekend too. I got it out having the whippersnipper cord.
All
very,
part
very
of the spring planning process, I guess. Getting ready to go. My lawn's woken up a little bit. I assume yours has. Yep. You've got a Tiff Tough lawn. Mm-hmm. Have you been mowing it at all yet?
Yeah, it's been growing for a couple of weeks now. We had a nice little warm snap not too long ago, which really kicked it into gear. I even noticed here, so we're a couple of hours south of Sydney on the south coast. I know you've got a Segrange lawn. The Segrange on our plots here is pretty much already woken up and greened up. It's been surprisingly warm. So you've been mowing too? You would have been.
I haven't. I probably should have.
Yeah.
I probably should have. It's looking a bit up and down, a bit how you're going. I'll be definitely getting the first mow of the season this weekend in, and hopefully starting to look at other things I might want to address throughout the warmer months to get it looking as best I can. This podcast episode is going to be on spring lawn care, but obviously a lot of people may want to do a spring lawn renovation where they undertake aerating, dethatching, top dressing, undertaking a full renovation process on their lawn. We're going to go into that a lot more detail in a second podcast, or a part 2, I guess, to this podcast. There's so much to cover in spring content. So in this one, we'll stick to the fundamentals for spring lawn care and warm season grasses, and then we'll go into a reno in more detail.
And we haven't done that. We haven't done that by accident either. It's probably still a little bit too early in most parts of the country, being the first day of spring. Last year we had to wait till mid-late October. I don't think you'll have to wait that long this year, but keep an eye out for that episode. It's going to be put live. That's a really poor way of saying it. It's going to be live around about the time where you should be starting to look at it. But unless you're north of Brisbane, I wouldn't be too concerned about renos just yet. But moving away from mower and equipment maintenance, I think we covered that in enough depth there. We're going to look at a couple of other aspects that you can look at now before you get into things like renovating and actually mowing more regularly. Nath, what's the first one we're going to talk about here?
Well, there's sort of two things. I guess the main one I've noticed with my lawn, and most people will, is that the weeds don't stop growing throughout winter. And unless you've got a really good pre-emergent program in place with herbicides, you may have had weeds sort of establish and spread in your lawn throughout the winter period. So one of the first things you can do is address those weeds and start to get them under control and treat them or hand weed them before they get any worse, and address it now, and then start to look at your lawn health. So I guess where would you start, Joe?
Yeah, it's a great time to do it now. And I will just say one thing, even if you do have a strict pre-emergent program, and I know this can be frustrating for people because pre-emergents aren't cheap and you've got to be very meticulous with how you apply them, but you can still get weeds in your lawn even though you're using pre-emergents. Weed seeds can come in a variety of different ways and germinate and from a variety of different sources. So it's important not to get frustrated. Your pre-emergents are working. They're probably cancelling out 99% of weeds, but there's always going to be one or two that sneaks into your lawn. But for now, me personally, I have a very basic way to approach weeds, and that's wherever I possibly can, I'm always trying to remove by hand. I'm trying to minimise herbicide application wherever I can and where possible. I know sometimes it gets into plague proportions and it gets totally out of hand, so you give up pulling them out by hand or plucking them out and you go for a herbicide. But just for people that have what I would call a manageable amount of weeds in their lawn. And it depends on the type of weed too. Like if you've got clover or oxalis, which grows down in the thatch layer or grows across your lawn, it's going to be very hard to remove by hand. But if you have a couple of broadleaf weeds or a little bit of wintergrass here and there, I would strongly advise people at this time of year to remove them by hand, because as we're coming into the time of year when your grasses start growing, you do not want to inhibit growth at all by applying the wrong herbicide or too much herbicide. So just a little tip from me is if they're manageable, where you can, remove by hand, or you can buy one of those weed pullers, or you can get a little bit of Roundup and a paintbrush and dab it on the head. But
we get the question all the time. We get people sending photos of their weeds in their lawn. There might only be a few of them, and it's really interesting how often people resort to the herbicides or want it identified in order to find out which herbicide to use without even thinking, okay, maybe I could just pull it out by hand. The process of identification is important because some weeds obviously shouldn't be hand weeded. They require specific herbicides. But in a lot of situations, if you know what it is, just pull it out by hand. It's the quickest and easiest way to do it. And it's surprising how often people don't even think of it for some odd reason. I'm not sure. But yeah, if you're using herbicides, it takes a while for the weed to die as well, and it's slowly breaks down and decays, and then eventually it will be mown away. But the quickest and easiest fix is simply to bend over and pull it out. But
definitely.
I don't know why that is, but we get that a lot. So yeah, if you can, just pull them out.
And if you're unsure of what type of weed you had, you can actually download the Lawn Solutions Australia app. We've got a really good tool on there where you can easily identify weeds. If you're still unsure, you can flick us an email, you can send us a message on Facebook, you can give us a call, whatever you need to do, and we can help diagnose the weed that's in your lawn. But again, herbicides are great, again, if they're not manageable, but This time of year, we want to maximise this growth window as much as we possibly can, and we don't want to risk any inhibition by spraying the wrong herbicide or too much herbicide. So, yeah, pull out by hand. If they get out of hand, you can spray. Just one thing with herbicides, and I can't stress this enough, is the companies that manufacture these herbicides spend millions and millions of dollars, years and years of research on making sure that they put the right application rate and the right instructions on the label. So please read it and please follow it. Don't take it for granted. They are actually really thoughtfully put together. So please adhere to all label rates and instructions when spraying herbicides.
Exactly. So you've addressed the weeds. You're on the right path to, I guess, getting them removed from your lawn. You might have noticed last season during the warmer months, you weren't getting the performance out of your lawn that you were hoping for. Spring's a great time to address and do a bit of diagnosis into what these things might be. And soil's such a big, important part to the success of a good lawn. So I'd highly recommend looking at doing a pH test on your soil if you've had that issue in the past. If the lawn's going great guns, you're probably okay. There's a good chance your pH of your soil is good. But if you've had issues in the past and you've looked at multiple ways of trying to get your lawn to perform and it's still not, spring's a great time, especially now, early spring, to check your soil pH, do a pH test, and then address it and rectify it, whether it's acidic or alkaline.
Yeah, soil pH is commonly overlooked, and I think a pH test kit is something everyone should have in their shed or their garage. You mightn't get it out every single year or every season, but I guarantee you will use it, and it's important to continually check. And I hate telling people whether things are dear or expensive because everyone's different, but I think comparable to other things, they are a pretty cheap thing to buy. You can pick up a soil pH test kit for $20 to $30, whack it in the shed, and it'll last you a long, long time. And I've been told before that soil pH is like a baby's mouth. When the pH is right, the baby's mouth's open. All the food and nutrient are going into the baby to feed the baby. When soil pH is too low or too high, the baby's mouth slowly shuts, and you can feed it and you can water it till the cows come home. But if the baby's mouth shuts, nothing's going into to feed the baby.
Exactly, it's a good analogy.
Yeah. But it's true. So it's something worth checking if you're fertilizing, you're watering, you think your lawn care program's on point. It's important to check pH because at the end of the day, the grass is just the pretty stuff on top. Everything happens in that top 150 to 200 mil of soil layer, and if that isn't right, then it's everything else you're doing is a little bit of a waste of time. Yeah. So if you're not getting the performance you want, as Nath said before, it's really worth doing a soil pH check. And if it's too low, which means it's acidic, so we recommend between 5.5 and 7 as the ideal pH. If you're just either side of that, you're probably going to be pretty good. But if you're low, if you're 3, 4, or even pushing into 5, you have an acidic soil base and you have to use lime or dolomite at a variety of different rates depending on what you need to do to raise that pH level. If you have a very alkaline soil, which is generally 7.5 to 8 or higher, it can be a little bit harder to alter, but there's products like sulfate of ammonia or other sulfur-based products that you can use to bring your pH down. So for all warm season varieties, we're looking at between 5.5 and 7. If you don't quite have that, you may have to look at some alterations to get your pH in the right space for your grass to really thrive.
And if all that sounds a little bit confusing, do a little bit of research. We've got heaps of info on the Lawn Solutions website. Check it out there or feel free to reach out to us because we're happy to help. Or your local turf supplier. They obviously deal with similar conditions or soil conditions in your climate as well, and they'll be experiencing possibly similar things. And there's certainly expertises when it comes to identifying how to rectify soil and what amendments to use and how to use them.
And if you're old school or if you've bought lawn in the last 5 or 10 years, you might have been given or seen a copy of our Loving Your Lawn book. It has an awesome double-page spread on all things soil pH and how to rectify it. And so if you're not into looking on phones or on the computer, you can get a hard copy of our book. Most of the suppliers will have it handy there, but it is worth checking out, and it's got a really good article on soil pH. I've used it all the time. So
it's a great go-to guide for lots of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Double plug, app and book. It's going well here. Fertilizing. So after we check our pH and we make sure it's in the right range, I guess we can start to look at fertilizing. Now, I know you've used liquids on your lawn in the past, so I guess liquids are more of a quick boost as opposed to a granular fertilizer, which gives you more longevity. What are a few of the liquids that you've used before and that are around in the marketplace?
Yeah, so I use a few different ones, and obviously with different goals in mind. I think at this time of year, when it's possibly a little bit too early in a lot of areas to use a granular fertilizer. So a granular is generally for more slow release. It's going to provide a slower release of nutrient over the growing season. What you might need now to aid the winter to spring transition, I guess, while your lawn's waking up, is a foliar feed, and liquids are great for it. Products like Exceed liquid fertilizer, obviously a lawn solutions product, I highly recommend it. It's a great way to give your lawn a quick boost. Really help it when it's sort of needing it at its most. If you're applying a granular fertilizer, it's not going to really have much of an effect until those temperatures really start to grow. So Exceed's a really great transitional liquid fertilizer that I highly recommend to use. I've also been using other iron-based liquid products throughout the winter period, Iron Guard, for example, things like that. So I've been trying to sustain the overall plant health throughout that period, retain a little bit of colour. But right now I'll be looking to use Exceed on my lawn. I think that's a really good go-to.
I got a shock with how quickly it actually greens it up, particularly zoysia grass. Zoysia reacts quickly to everything, but we applied some Exceed out on the research plots here, and it greened up literally overnight. It was crazy. And iron's a bit of a go-to product at the moment. A lot of people are applying either liquid iron or iron chelate on their lawn, and it is a really good time to do it because it can green it up quicker than what obviously the heat actually would, what it naturally would. So, and a lot of these products, the good thing about liquids is you can mix a lot of these products together. They are compatible with each other. So Exceed and Iron, for example, you can put them together and you can give your lawn a really quick boost.
Just quickly on that, Joe, we do find that, yes, you can mix them. In some circumstances, though, you might want to mix them together before you mix them together in your knapsack.
Yep.
In some circumstances, they can create sort of like a jelly-like consistency. It depends on the product and nutrients that are included in them and the components. But generally, some of the iron-based products can be a bit weird. Mix them separately first and then combine them.
Yep.
And you'll find that they'll then get the consistency and that they'll spray through your applicator without any issue.
That's why we got him here, the liquid fertilizer expert. Good tip. Granular fertilizers. Now, we just spoke about this quickly before. I'm more of a granular fertilizer user as opposed to liquids. More, my lawn is on the larger side, so spraying liquids can be quite time-consuming, and granulars are good. But it is best to wait, like you said before, for granular fertilizer. So liquids are taken up by the leaf, so they can get into the plant a lot quicker, where granulars are in the soil, they've got to be taken up by the roots. So the time for them to become active can be a little bit longer. So it is best to wait, I say, until your lawn's actively growing. So if you've mown it once or twice after winter, I would apply a granular fertilizer then. And just a bit of a tip too, what I've found is a good way to actually wake your lawn up is to mow it. It can get a little bit, personalising a lawn here, but it can get a little bit complacent over winter where it gets quite happy. And sometimes it just needs the top of that leaf taken off to really kick it into gear and get it growing again. But once you've mown sort of 2 or 3 times and you know you're back to mowing regularly, it's a pretty safe time to apply a granular fertiliser. But make sure you water it in, otherwise you can run into some issues if you don't. If you are applying granular fertilisers as well, I will say one thing. Again, this is a personal experience, but if you're applying near a driveway or a hard surface, get the blower or the broom and blow or sweep the granules off the hard surface back onto the lawn, because then when you irrigate, you can stain driveways and stain paths. So that's one thing.
A good message, I guess, with the liquids as well. Anything in particular that contains iron is going to stain. So really important that you're cleaning these products off your hard surfaces as soon as possible to avoid that. We're on the New South Wales South Coast. We always say public holidays are a good guide of when to spread out granular fertilisers. For us, October long weekend is a really good guide. I guess if you're further north, you might want to go a bit sooner. If you're further south, you might want to do it a bit later on. What's your thoughts there, Jay?
Yeah, footy grand final weekend, October long weekend's always been the time to go. I'm a Dragons fan, so I haven't had a lot to do on footy grand final weekend for about 13 years now. So fertilising,
might as well do the lawn.
Yeah, might as well do the lawn. So it's a great time to do it. But again, it varies year on year. That's just a guide. I'll say what I've said before, and that's a couple of mows. You notice it's growing again. It's a perfect time to put a granular fertiliser out. You don't want to be too regimented with it because every season's different. Preventatives. Now in particular, I guess, is a good time. If you're applying preventative products seasonally, a good way to remember to do it is at the start or the first day of spring. So preventative products, particularly, I guess, acelepryn-based products like Grub Guard Ultimate, they last for up to 6 months. So if you're looking at having a program of prevention for lawn grubs, you've had issues in previous seasons, now is the time to start looking at applying it to your lawn. Yeah, so September and March is generally the two times we look at applying preventative insecticides like Acelepryn or GrubGuard Ultimate or anything with the Acelepryn technology in it. That can vary. People say October, April, and even before that too, but it depends on your area and what grubs you're trying to control. But I think September and March is a pretty easy time to remember it. And if you're putting, say, a granular fertilizer application out in mid to late September, you can do your Acelepryn application at a similar time. They both need to be irrigated in, but it's just a little time to trigger your memory. It's 1st of September, it's spring. I've got to get a preventative insecticide application out. And products like Acelepryn and GrubGuard Ultimate, the technology in these products is second to none. When it comes to preventative insecticides, they are the best things you can do for your lawn. One application can last up to 6 months at the higher rate, and it's grub insurance more than anything, and it's something to really look out for. I know on the East Coast, armyworm are a massive problem up and down the coast, and Acelepryn is virtually stops their effect on your lawn. So it's something definitely worth looking at. And people look at these products and they go, a bag of Acelepryn is $180 or whatever it is. It's quite expensive, but you got to break it down. The bag's 10 kilos. You only need to do 2 apps a year, and it does up to 1,000 square meters. So if you've got a 100 square meter lawn, it can be up to 3, 4, 5 years of grub control. So it's definitely worth looking at. GrubGuard Ultimate, just so people are clear on that, it is Acelepryn GR. It's the same product. It's just in a smaller, I guess a more affordable size, or for people that just have a small lawn.
The Acelepryn in a larger bag can be a little bit, I guess, the same reason you said, it can be expensive, I guess, if you don't look at it from the perspective of how many applications you're getting out of the bag. But if you have got a fairly small yard, the GrubGuard Ultimate comes in a 4 kilo for that Acelepryn, and it's a great way to go about it. And these products, whilst we don't really advocate for the use of insecticides unless you really have to, Acelepryn is one of the safest insecticide preventative products you can use. It doesn't target non-target organisms. So if you're going to look at grub, or you've had grub issues and you want to try and get it under control, this is the healthiest way for the environment and for your lawn to go about it, rather than treating an issue once it's already arisen and you have to chuck a heap of not so friendly insecticides at the lawn. Yeah,
it's good for the environment, it's good for your lawn, but it's good for yourself too. There's actually no PPE requirements at all when applying Acelepryn GR or GrubGuard Ultimate. So it's a super safe product. So if you are a little bit hesitant about using insecticides, use a preventative like this because they're really, really safe to use.
Way to go. So in preventatives, I guess there's also the preventative or pre-emergent herbicide products as well. Now might be a little bit soon for some of them. Generally, you're looking to do it as temperatures or soil temperatures start to rise, depending on your location. When would you start looking at putting out something like Oxifert, Joe?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It does vary. It varies with your climate and it varies with the program that you're on as well. As long as you're not leaving it more than sort of 10, 11, 12 weeks after your last pre-emergent application, you don't want to give the weeds a window to germinate. So I'd probably be looking a little later, perhaps more like October in a couple of weeks' time to be using a pre-emergent herbicide. But look, it depends. Everyone will have their own special time or special date to do it, but just make sure you do get it on there because like the preventative insecticide, they're second to none in terms of stopping weeds. They do a really good job. But I think a thing to consider with Oxifert or Oxipro or Oximax or whatever oxydiazone-based product that you want to use is the window is shorter than Acelepryn. So you are going to have to apply more, but the weed control is really, really good. So it's definitely worth looking at.
Yep. So we've got a couple of topics to finish off, I guess. But one of the things we're sort of trying to touch on a little bit as much as we can over the next few months is in regards to the forecast. I think a lot of people are going to experience some pretty dry, warm season conditions over the coming months. And one of the best things we can do as lawn owners is look at wetting agents and products that are going to limit the amount of water that we need to use on our lawns in order to sustain them or to keep them alive or as healthy as we can. So back onto the liquids, but a different form of liquid, I guess, is wetting agents. We have a product called Lawn Soaker. I think it's a really good time to start looking at including it in your program for the warmer months, more so than it has been important in the last few years.
Yeah. People should be using them anyway, I feel. Again, they're great because they save water, but you get more bang for your buck out of the water that you actually do use, and it makes a massive difference. If you see a little bit of hydrophobia or you have hydrophobic soils, and what I mean by that is you can irrigate your lawn and the water just sits on top and it doesn't seem to soak into the soil, you probably have a little bit of hydrophobia, and a wetting agent like Lawn Soaker will fix that up really, really well. But even if you don't and we're coming into a dry period, it's definitely something you can look at because you can slash your water bill, you can do the right thing by the environment. Another product I will mention just in this category, and I know it's a different product and it's one we normally spruik in winter, but if we do get really hot and dry, Colour Guard Plus can be a great option to colour up your lawn without using a heap of water.
Yep.
It's something it's definitely worth looking at, particularly, and I hope we don't, but if we get really hot and dry like we did in the summer of 19, where lawns were on water restriction, lawns were turning brown, instead of pumping all the water you possibly can to turn it green, you can use a pigment. It's a perfectly viable option, but if you've still got some water to use, Soaker definitely is a product worth considering.
Hopefully you've installed a drought-tolerant lawn that whilst it's going to lose a certain amount of colour. Tifta, for example, shout out for Tifta. It's highly drought tolerant. It's going to lose a little bit of colour throughout that period, but it's still not going to die. But an awesome way to make it green is to use Colour Guard. We saw it in 2019. A lot of people were using pigments on their lawns back then, and it was just the most sustainable way to go about it during water restrictions. And I think that may occur again.
Just not a segue, but it is a segue. Just with Colour Guard and pigments in general, is we discovered them about 10 years ago when we were traveling in the US, and they actually use them predominantly in the US for colouring up drought dormant lawns, not cold dormant lawns. Yeah. So they get so cold in the south there that lawns go totally white. There's no point using pigments virtually at all. So pigments were used there predominantly in the heat. We were traveling through Texas at the time, a very hot and dry place, and they got a shock over the years when they learnt that our pigment usage is the vast majority of that is in winter. So it definitely has a strong application for drought dormancy. And when I say drought dormancy is the same as winter dormancy. The plant does the same thing. It shuts down, it stops growing, it loses colour. So it's something definitely worth considering if we do get hot and dry like they're saying that we will.
Yeah, absolutely. So that covers off all the products. Obviously, you want to use products, hopefully as minimal as you have to, but there's some great products out there that will perform a variety of tasks that will help you get your lawn as best you possibly can. We're in the turf business. We're a national group of turf suppliers. We're a national group of turf farmers. We like to supply turf all year round, and you can do in Australia. Australia's climate doesn't get too cold that you can't do it. It might go dormant, it might sit there and not establish until it warms up again. But a lot of people think of spring as being quite synonymous with laying turf, and it is a great time to look at laying some turf right now.
Yeah, definitely is. And I tell people this all the time. If they're in July or August, they say, I've got a bit of a messy backyard, I want to tidy up. Absolutely, you can lay turf in the middle of winter, July and August, but if you lay it then, you're going to be using it at the same time. You're going to be mowing at the same time if you were to lay it now, because it doesn't start growing until the weather warms up. So, and this is the ideal time to lay turf for a number of reasons. The main two, I guess, are it's warm, so it's going to establish and it's going to grow. But this is better than the middle of summer because you can establish it using less water, and your risk of your lawn drying out and dying is reduced significantly compared to if you're laying it in summer. And the number one thing we see when people lay lawns in the middle of the summer is we'll get a photo saying, hey, my lawn's not working, what's going on? 99 times out of 100, they simply haven't watered it enough. That first period is so crucial if you're going to do it in the middle of the summer. But if you do it now, you can establish your lawn healthily and efficiently by using significantly less water. So that's why it's such a great time to look at laying lawns now. So if your backyard looks a little bit untidy, or you've got a certain spot that you want to look at, don't hesitate. Pull the trigger now and jump in and put
and
some
reach
turf on
out
the
to your local Lawn Solutions Australia
Absolutely.
accredited turf supplier, which
Absolutely.
is great segue.
Absolutely.
I think that's probably enough for a spring lawn care sort of topic here for you. We obviously are always interested in hearing what you'd like to hear about. I think another really important thing that a lot of lawn fanatics in particular are looking at doing to their lawns in the coming months is doing a lawn renovation, doing things like aerating, dethatching, top dressing, the whole works, including pre-emergent applications, that sort of thing. So we're going to get into that in our next part of this podcast. So stay tuned for part 2. Where we dive into spring lawn renovation.
So, yeah, it's going to be a fun one because there's so many different aspects to spring lawn renovations, and they've become so popular now. I notice there's a lot of companies now that are manufacturing scarifiers, and 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
You couldn't find them, but now it's really exciting. So as well as the podcast, we do renovations on our plots here as well. So there's going to be some content coming out, some video content as well of us actually doing them ourselves. So you can take a look at that and you can tell us what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right and what you'd like to see next time. But I'm looking forward to that one. It's going to be a bumper episode, and as usual, it was nice talking to you, Nate.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.